This is a Podfic reading for You Work For Me on AO3. Now, the author has chosen to remain anonymous, however, they are still able to see kudos and they are very much able to see comments. So, as always, the link will be in the description or on the page somewhere. Please follow it, please leave them some praise, they deserve it. On to the story. Summary. I know you've got a secret identity and all, but let me know if you ever need a job. Peter couldn't help the snort. If only the man knew that he was already working for him. I'll let you know. There must have been something off about his tone, because Tony narrowed his eyes at him and just stared for a few seconds. Peter tilted his head innocently. No way you already work for me. An innocuous comment sparks an idea that Spider-Man is a Stark Industries employee. Which he is, but surely that's not enough to out him, is it? Tony will not rest until his crazy theory gets proven correct. Chapter 1. Hypothesis. The first time Spider-Man met Iron Man was forever stuck in Peter's brain like a core memory. Tony Stark, the genius inventor, was impressed with his webs, the ones he'd painstakingly formulated and made himself. Peter decided not to hide the fact that he was the creator of both the web fluid and web shooters. It wasn't a clue to his identity. After all, who'd expect a teenager to invent such a thing? And that meant they had common interests they could bond over, other than saving the world, of course. It thrilled Peter to know that he could keep up with the man in a discussion. It was after one of those discussions, relaxing in the tower after a successful mission, that Tony threw in a casual remark. I know you got a secret identity and all, but let me know if you ever need a job. Peter couldn't help the snort. If only the man knew he was already working for him. I'll let you know. There must have been something off about his tone, because Tony narrowed his eyes at him and just stared for a few seconds. Peter tilted his head innocently. No way you already work for me. Uh-oh. Why would I work for you? Peter asked, putting a hint of genuine confusion in his voice. Why would you not work for me? Stark Industries are the top company in the world. Peter shrugged. Debatable. And just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I have to work in science. Debatable? Tony sounded so offended that a few of the closest Avengers turned their heads in their direction, but then decided they weren't interested and returned to whatever they were doing. Peter was grateful. Who's better then, huh? Peter knew just the answer to make Tony mad. I don't know. Oscorp? Tony glared at him. You don't believe that. I don't believe that you believe that. Oh, and how well do you know me? Peter teased against his better judgment. Now that Tony was so close to the truth, Peter just had to exude confidence. Don't show weakness, don't let him know he's onto something. Easier said than done. What good has Oscorp ever done? Peter paused for a few seconds, mind returning to that one specific field trip 4 years ago. Oscorp didn't mean to give him superpowers, he knew that. But that was what happened, so was it a good thing? Probably not. He could have died. But the benefits remained. I have a great answer, but first of all, I'm not sure if it even counts, and second of all, it would totally get misunderstood, just like me by the Daily Bugle. The newspaper was so obsessed with calling him a menace that Peter almost felt impressed, in the weirdest and the most roundabout way. Try me. Sorry, no can do. Peter's lips formed a tight smile under the mask, but he kept his voice light. It's a friendship level 8 conversation. Tony narrowed his eyes. Wait, have you worked for Oscorp? Thankfully, Natasha chose this moment to interrupt their conversation, just coming back from the kitchen area with a steaming cup of coffee. She leaned silently against the nearest wall, observing them with one eyebrow raised. What are we talking about? Tony let the interrogation go, addressing Black Widow instead. I think Spider-Man here might be working for me, but I can't prove it. Oh? Natasha measured him with a look that made him feel seen. Part of him wanted to touch his mask just to make sure it was still on his head, or cover himself with one of the multiple empty pizza boxes littering the room. I mean, if that's what you want to believe, then go right ahead. Peter kept his body and voice relaxed and prayed one of the best spies in the world wasn't onto him. Even if Tony were to check every employee personally, what were the chances of finding Spider-Man among them? How would he prove it if he couldn't do it so far? It might be fun for me to watch you losing your mind, honestly. Maybe he was taking it too far. What do you think, Natasha? Her face stayed unreadable. Wouldn't hurt to check. Peter nodded enthusiastically. Hard agree. He had no choice. He couldn't show any weakness now. Is there a point in trying to find Spider-Man's identity now, or is it just for your own satisfaction, Tony? Steve asked from a nearby armchair, and Peter suddenly realized they've garnered more attention since Natasha joined the conversation. What do you mean? Tony gestured towards himself. My satisfaction is the point. Now, Friday, show me the profiles of our brightest employees. Focus on biochemistry and robotics. Age 20 to 40. Male. Employed currently or in the last 5 years. Perfect. Ah, you think I could be an ex-employee? Peter put a hand on his chin in thought and nodded. That's smart. But really, 40? You think I'm 40 years old? Tony turned to look straight into his mask's white eyes and said, Scratch that, Friday. Age 20 to 50. Hey! On the outside, he was theatrically outraged. On the inside, he was sighing in relief. Tony clearly didn't know his exact age, but he had to suspect that Peter was either in his 20s or 30s, simply because nothing else made sense, which excluded him from the suspect list from the very start. Friday started generating the results, and now everyone watched with mild interest. Peter really could do without the additional audience. That's a lot, Bruce commented. Stark Industries hires only bright people, was Friday's answer. This is not working out, Tony complained, seeing how long the list was. Friday, narrow down the search to people on my level. The results disappeared, and after a few seconds, one profile showed up on the screen. Tony Stark's profile. Peter gasped. Iron Man is actually Spider-Man? Tony ignored his dramatics. Not that much, Friday. Do you think I'm Spider-Man? And Friday we trust. Peter put his hand on his chest solemnly. If she says it can only be you, it can only be you. No more pulling the wool over our eyes, Tony Stark, if that's even your real name. Clint cackled, leaning over the table to get a better view. Yeah, Tony, explain that. This is the only result of your search criteria, boss. Peter loved Friday so much. Too bad she was currently trying to find him in the employee database. Everyone settle down. All right, Friday. Narrow the search to everyone on Spider-Man's level. Peter wasn't sure how well Friday could judge his level of intelligence, but he didn't mind giving it a try since there was no way Friday would actually find him. The screen cleared, and a couple of seconds later, a singular profile appeared before them. Again. Oh, Friday, Peter cheered in his mind. That's so sweet. Outwardly, he just nodded, like he fully expected that result. The truth prevails. You caught me. It is I, Tony Stark. Tony scowled at the sight of his own photo. So we're going to have to do it the hard way. That sounded troubling. But there was no way Tony would find him, right? Right? Peter was exiting the elevator with his supervisor, Dr. Miller, when he experienced one of the biggest jump scares in the recent month. Tony Stark right there in the hallway talking to one of the scientists. What was he even doing on the lower floors? Wasn't he too famous, rich and busy to talk to them? Didn't he have people for that? No offence, but Peter knew him well enough by this point. The man liked doing his own thing. This couldn't be fun or interesting for him. "Mr. Stark!" Peter's supervisor exclaimed, eyes wide. "We weren't expecting you here, sir." When Tony turned to look at them, Peter instinctively made himself look smaller. Not that he was that imposing to begin with. Not when he was Peter Parker. "Oh, I know. Thought I'd drop in, check in on everything. Need to know my own company, right?" Tony's smile was carefree, but there was something about him that suggested that his visit wasn't random. "Don't tell me he's here because of me," Peter thought, horror beginning to gather in his chest. He can't be serious. Was that little meaningless conversation really that important that Tony would try to look for him personally? But Peter told him that he didn't work for Stark Industries. Was he so distrustful and curious about Spider-Man's identity that he'd investigate anyway? What a stupid question. Of course he would. Tony used to be so annoyed that he wasn't able to track Spider-Man down. But Peter always checked any nearby cameras before finding a place to check, and his sixth sense warned him of any attempts at tailing him, which resulted in a stalemate. Spider-Man kept on doing his job, and eventually everyone begrudgingly accepted his need for privacy. But some nosy ones weren't that happy about it, whether it was a matter of pride or bureaucracy. Peter could work with their hurt egos. He wasn't sure he could say the same about them treating him like a child and his family and friends potentially being in more danger. He hoped his age wouldn't change anything, but the facts were that most of the superheroes were years older than him, and he was barely an adult. He could already imagine getting lectured about starting a vigilante career at age 14. It was better if nobody knew. Of course, Dr. Miller nodded, buying the obvious lie without a second thought. "If there's anything you need, just say the word." Suddenly, he remembered that Peter was still standing next to him, like the awkward nerd that he was, and generously decided to introduce him. "This is one of our new interns, Peter Parker." That shook Peter out of his introspection. He decided to talk before his supervisor decided to say something else. The last thing he needed right now was a compliment. "Nice to meet you, sir," he said, like a fan that was meeting their idol, but trying to be chill about it and failing only slightly, making sure that both the tone of his voice and posture were nothing like Spider-Man's. Tony nodded in acknowledgement. His gaze slid over Peter. "Nice t-shirt." Peter looked down. Oh, of course he had a t-shirt with a pun on it. The "once I told a chemistry joke but there was no reaction" t-shirt. Well, good enough. Hopefully nothing else would happen and Peter would stay a forgettable face with a quirky t-shirt. One of the thousands roaming the halls. Faces, not t-shirts. He didn't want to endlessly worry whether he was saying too much or not enough or the wrong thing. Then again, Parker luck was a thing. "If I need anything, I'll ask you," Tony addressed Dr. Miller, as casual as they were. "Feel free to go back to your work now." Phew, crisis averted. Still, there was anticipation crawling right beneath Peter's skin. A warning, a promise. He'd have to be careful. Peter was extremely aware of Tony's presence on the lower floors of the tower, thanks to his enhanced hearing. Every conversation, every rumor, every whisper. Nothing could hide from him as long as he cared to listen. And that was the question. Should he care? Should he try to gain more information and keep an eye on the investigation? There was a real possibility that all that knowledge would only make his behaviour more suspicious. He wasn't the best actor, despite having a very separate alter ego. Not when directly confronted. His main advantage was that nobody suspected him to begin with. To be fair, Peter Parker wasn't suspected by Tony. Spider-Man was, though. Peter decided to try and focus on his work, but from time to time a stray word would find its way to his ears, and he couldn't help but listen in, just for a moment. "Did you hear? Mr. Stark was on our floor earlier today." "I've seen Mr. Stark asking Oliver about the new project, the one with smart bandages."
"Ah, Mr. Stark, good morning. How can I help you?"
Every mention of the man's name made him perk up like a pet hearing keys turn in the front door. It was so stupid. Still, he did his best to tune it out. It's been weeks since the conversation that started it all. How long has Tony been working on uncovering the truth? What else has he done? Who were his suspects? But Peter didn't see Tony again. Not for a while. One day he went to get himself a coffee, too tired to function without caffeine, when someone approached him from the side. Peter didn't look up, assuming it was just one of his co-workers.
"Is the coffee here good?"
the person asked, and Peter froze, hearing a familiar voice.
"I've never actually used those machines."
Ever so slowly, Peter turned around, heart racing, hand carefully clasped around the cup. A part of him wanted to squeeze it hard and send the liquid flying. "Mr. Stark!" he exclaimed instead, not even having to fake the surprise. A few seconds of blinking later, an awkward smile formed on his lips. "It's pretty good, I think. It's Stark Industries after all. Even vending machines are the best." Tony chuckled quietly.
"Damn right, kid."
He looked him up and down, brows furrowing in realization.
"Oh, it's you. How many of those t-shirts do you have?"
Peter looked down at himself and his "never trust an atom, they make up everything" t-shirt. Shoot. He knew his terrible sense of fashion would be his undoing one day. Either those t-shirts or the spandex. "A lot, but I think they fit the job."
"I think some people would disagree with you on that."
Tony deadpanned, reaching out to get himself a coffee. "Are you one of them, sir?"
"Definitely not. I was thinking we should make them mandatory to wear."
Peter's polite smile turned into a beam. "I was always a fan of your innovative thinking, Mr. Stark." Maybe it wasn't such a good idea to engage in conversation with Tony, but it just felt right. Falling into old habits was way too easy. What he actually should do was walk the tightrope. Too much talking could give Tony a crucial hint or make him realize that Peter and Spider-Man shared some massive similarities. But evading him would make Peter seem like he had something to hide. Which was true, of course, but still inconvenient.
"You might be the only fan I have left if I do this," Tony muttered. The coffee was ready and he turned to look at Peter again. "How old are you? I thought we didn't hire kids."
An automatic glare crossed Peter's face for just a second before he forced himself to smooth out his expression again. "Because you don't. And I'm 18. I'm a university student."
"Could have fooled me with that face."
Tony's eyes held a trace of amusement.
"What are you studying?"
"Biochemistry."
Interesting, interesting. Not my specialty, though."
Peter nodded. "Your specialty is creating state-of-the-art robots, sir. We know."
"Oh, really? People know? Thought I'd have to shout it from the rooftops."
"You kind of do. When you go out in the suit." Peter scolded himself mentally, but couldn't stop talking. He should have disengaged. He really should have stopped being so damn comfortable. But it was so easy after all those conversations with the Avengers where he faked confidence and cracked jokes. He knew this person. There was an established pattern of interaction, one-sided familiarity. He knew he shouldn't. He really knew it all. So why was it so hard?
Maybe he could play it off somehow. He had to. Kids these days, Tony sighed, taking a sip of his coffee. They think they know everything. The coffee is pretty good, by the way.
Well, I did know that,
Peter answered with a little smile, cradling his own cup with both hands before finally tasting it. It was indeed good. Touché, you got me this time. Now, tell me, what do you think about working here? That was a good topic change for Peter.
It's the best, sir. It doesn't even feel like work because I can do all the things I'm interested in.
And the people, has anyone in particular impressed you? Oh, that question would fool anyone else, but not Peter. He was the only employee that knew Tony's true intention behind it.
Everyone is so kind. I don't think I can pick just one person.
All right, how about this? Base it on intelligence, not personality. This wasn't the time to argue that Spider-Man's personality was just as important as his intelligence, if not more important. So, with regret, he ignored it. Instead, Peter tilted his head.
Why are you asking, Mr. Stark? Do you want to promote someone? Is this what this is about?
Then he gasped.
Are you looking for someone to take your place?
Hold your horses, kid. I'm still young and spry. I don't need an heir, Tony scoffed. Peter's face flashed with doubt before schooling itself into neutrality, but the man noticed it anyway. I may not be a toddler like some of our interns, but I'm not old. Instead of taking the insult for what it was, Peter feigned ignorance.
Toddlers? What would toddlers do at an internship?
Get themselves coffee from vending machines, apparently. Peter blinked a few times, then looked at the coffee cup in Tony's hand, almost like he didn't mean to, but his eyes were drawn there anyway.
Oh.
Not me. Tony threw a disappointed glance at the traitorous cup and took a big gulp, wincing at the temperature. Damn it. The way he looked at it, like it simultaneously killed his entire family and could solve all of his life problems, resonated with Peter on a deep level as a fellow caffeine addict.
Speaking from experience, sir, sometimes we need to give up on coffee and go to sleep,
he said carefully, like he was talking to a ticking bomb. If someone had said the same thing to him, he definitely wouldn't listen. But who knows? Maybe Tony was more responsible and mature. Who was he kidding? Definitely not. Full offence. When the man turned his still disappointed eyes to him, he could only shrug and smile, awkwardness on full display. I'll sleep when I'm dead, Tony deadpanned, then downed the rest of his coffee, wincing once again, and threw the cup in the trash can right next to the vending machine. Right, now I have things to do. He looked like he was about to walk off, but then turned back to Peter and looked at him. Something tingled right beneath Peter's skin. Have we met before, by the way? Now that was a loaded question, and it got Peter unreasonably nervous. Did Tony recognize him? Was something about him familiar enough to connect him to Spider-Man? Was it his voice? But he spoke in a different tone, and his voice was so generic. Was it the body type or the posture? It couldn't be. Not with the baggy clothes and trying to seem small. Was it his witty personality and sense of humour? Maybe. He wanted to be a total bore, but that didn't work out. His mouth just spat out the first thing on his mind. Pretend you're not Spider-Man. Pretend you're not Spider-Man. What would not Spider-Man say? Well, I've been working here for a few months now. Tony considered it for a few seconds, still looking, then shook his head. No, before that? Houston, we have a problem. Now, he could lie and say they had never met. This option had very dangerous consequences if Tony didn't believe him. Or he could tell the truth and become a bit more recognizable in Tony's memory. Not just weird t-shirts, but also weird lore. Peter had it all. Tony would probably get distracted enough not to follow the hunch. Peter hesitated before saying, "We did meet, kind of, but it was long ago. I doubt you even remember this, sir."
Try me.
After the recent events, Peter didn't like this particular line. "Okay, it was the Stark Expo, the one in 2010.
Tony's face twisted into a grimace. You were there? Sorry about that. We didn't get the best reviews that year.
"You have nothing to apologize for, Mr. Stark," Peter immediately protested. "You didn't do this, and sure, the day was technically ruined, but it was a cool story. I was at that famous expo, right?"
He intentionally didn't mention getting saved. Right. So when did we meet? You must have been a child back then.
Okay, now he had to mention it. "I was getting attacked by a drone and you came by, saved my life, and flew off again,"
Peter explained as casually as possible. Tony's eyes widened in disbelief. This is a cool story to you? You almost died.
"I mean, yeah? My aunt and uncle were freaking out, but I was amazed. That was the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. When I told my friend, he agreed. You even said good work to me."
I did? Tony's eyebrows furrowed in concentration. What did you do?
"Nothing, really."
His gaze drifted to a nearby wall as he recalled the day.
"But I had this Iron Man mask and glove, so when the drone focused on me, I kind of aimed at it with my hand, and then you shot it from behind me. It was almost like I was the one to destroy it."
Not everything was this clear, but most of the chaos bleeding into each other and creating a mess. But this one event always stood at the forefront of his memory. When Peter looked back at Tony to check his reaction, all traces of confusion were gone from the man's face. "That was you!" he yelled. Peter blinked.
"You remember that?"
"Do I fucking remember that?" Tony muttered under his breath. "Yes, I remember. I can't believe I'm meeting the kid that almost got murdered at my expo again." Peter didn't know whether to cringe or pout at the thought.
"Hey."
He scratched the back of his neck.
"It wasn't that bad."
Face grim, Tony shook his head. "No, it was worse." The finality in his words made Peter's gut churn. If Tony wasn't there to save him that day, he would most definitely die. Someone would find his dead body still in the Iron Man mask. His aunt and uncle would mourn him. His tragic passing would certainly make the news. But it didn't, because he was still alive.
"What happened, happened," Peter said, channeling all the wisdom his 18-year-old self could manage. "No use crying over spilt milk."
True. Tony let out air through his nose heavily, then perked up again. "So, Iron Man cosplay. And now you work for me?"
"Yeah?"
"I must be your favourite Avenger then," Tony continued, and it finally clicked. Of freaking course. Peter's desire to tease the man grew stronger again. Really? The corners of his mouth twitched, faced with Tony's unamused stare.
"I mean, there are just so many good choices."
"Like who?" Tony cut him off, offended. But Peter wasn't finished.
"But yes, I guess that's true, and I'm definitely not saying it just because I'm under duress."
They stood there in silence, eyes boring into him, but it didn't feel dangerous anymore. It felt fun. And just when the man opened his mouth to say something,
"Mr. Stark, could I have a moment of your time?"
a frantic voice called out. A scientist was walking towards them at a brisk pace, a few thick folders in her hands, hair in a messy bleach blonde ponytail, and glasses askew on her face, somewhat covering the massive eye bags. Taking a step back with his barely touched, but thankfully still hot coffee, Peter let the woman monopolize Tony's attention. She looked like she needed it, and he needed out. With one last smile and a nod, Peter walked away. Tony gave him a nod back and greeted the woman with practiced charisma.
Distraction successful. Help arrived, as unaware as it was of its role. Now he just had to hope for the best.